Alrighty. Next up, we have the boss, Anthony Hall at Solanco. How how does that? Let's start off right there. How does that work? Being an AD and the boys basketball coach. How do those two things coexist?
Um, well, if we were talking fall sports right now, it wouldn't have happened. At Solanco, we have, I have 11 sports going on in the fall, almost 15 when you count junior high. So there was no way that I was doing anything. But the fact that during the winter months at Solanco, we have both basketball teams and wrestling going on. There was only one opportunity for a sport for me to coach, and luckily it's the one that I do coach. So when I when we opened the position again after Coach Long had stepped down, we were receiving some resumes and stuff, and then Dr. Long, the building principal, Tryon came to me and was just like, "Have you waited long enough to put your resume in?" And I looked at him and said, "They're not going to go for it. They never let the AD coach before." And he was like, "Well, let me help with that. Give me your resume." When I gave it to him, his eyes kind of got really wide and said, "I had no idea you had this much experience." I said, "So if you want to move forward with it, I would love it because it's the piece that's been missing for the last 8 years, 9 years." And then they brought me in, and Dr. Bliss, the superintendent, Dr. Long, and the board talked it over, and here I am.
Yeah. Now touch on that if you will a little bit, because it wasn't a case where like, hey, I'm the AD, no one's really applying for it. I'll just kind of do it by default. Like you have a legitimate resume.
I do. Sir.
Can you talk to a little bit about that, because it probably isn't on the local scene where we're all that familiar with it, but it's not nonetheless impeccable.
I Okay, so I played 3 years at Brockport in upstate New York. Was part of a Sweet 16 team. Graduated from there and got my coaching start right away. I coached 1 year for Brockport. At the college level, was 1 year at Brockport, 1 year at Juniana, 2 years at Springfield College where I got my master's, and then 2 years at Slippery Rock University as a head assistant. And then just recruiting between driving from Pittsburgh to Philly just got to be enough. So I stepped down and took over as the athletic director at Hanover, right in the York Adams, and then got the basketball job at the same thing. So I was 4 years there, 2 years at Harrisburg Area Community College, and then 4 years at New Hope Academy Charter School that unfortunately is shut down, but it was in York. When I was at New Hope, we had a program that it did extremely well. I mean, we made the district championship game. We lost to Greenwood that had been there for 5 straight years. And unfortunately, my boys came out a little nervous, and we just couldn't get over the hump. But then after the goal was to expand the athletic department, which was the reason why that I moved aside, and we brought another coach in, which then they won the district championship. But then when I came to Solanco, they had said right away that our AD does not coach. So I had to put it behind me. So when you count it all up, I have almost 17 years of experience on the sidelines as a head high school coach and an assistant college coach. So I put that all down on paper, and that's also the number of camps running around and all the other stuff. So I'm glad that they were impressed when I gave it to them.
And the other thing I think people should know, if they haven't been to a Solanco game before, for when the boys are playing, is you're around, like you see it. You're sitting behind the bench, but you're also on your like AD duties, making sure everything is running hunky dory.
Yes, sir.
So, but again, to that point, you've seen this program for the last couple of years. It's not like you're just like, oh, I want to make sure everybody's behaving themselves. Right. And so, I mean, what have you seen in the last previous years from where you've kind of observed from afar, but kind of close to where now you got the keys. You're driving the car.
Yeah, it's the community wants basketball to be good again. It has been in the past, and of course everybody always brings up Johnny Miller's name. I walk past his jersey every day. I walk out of my office, so I'm there. I've met Johnny. He's been down to a few games, so everybody wants those days back. And then when I talk to alumni like a Mark Riley, who now lives in the community and has his boys coming through, he says the same thing. We're a blue-collar type school, and that's the way we used to play basketball. And now for me, it's a vested interest because my son, on his own take, has just started falling in love with basketball. So the major push for me was basketball has always been my sport. I absolutely love it. I see the talent there. We just got to get back to the old adage of details and discipline. I just have felt over the years the detail and discipline has gotten away from it, so much so that the person communicating with the youth league has not been able to communicate with the head varsity coach on what needs to be done from the kindergarten level all the way straight through. So for me, it was just kind of patch a couple of things. And the boys are hungry. They want to learn. They're asking to learn. So it's going to be bringing an old style mentality into the gym competitiveness wise, but also me adjusting to the new age of player where the game is a little bit more of a perimeter type game. but Solanco's got to play Solanco basketball, and then hopefully it becomes more competitive again.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about, and being in Solanco, you know this too. When I was talking to the old Coach Solanco, Coach Scott,
Yep.
One of the things that he mentioned, which sometimes you don't always appreciate, is like Solanco is a big district in terms of land mass, but it's not
Correct.
great to centrally, hey, let's go play at Main Street Park, right?
Correct. Yep.
So like how can you, I guess, I don't want to call it a challenge, but I guess in some ways it is, to where like, hey, can we do something maybe outside of the school? Like we don't need to go to the school. Like we can do some things. Like can the guys go out and like play with themselves, somewhere else or
Right.
something like that?
Well, I mean, the unfortunate thing, is that we are so geographically large that for a kid to leave his house if he doesn't have a hoop at home and try to find a hoop locally, they're right in the middle of town, which is 3 minutes away from the school.
Right.
So there are some kids could legitimately drive a half hour to find a park, or they can drive over the Maryland line to find a park. So one of the things that'll happen after this year is I'll get focused on communicating with SECA, the Southern End Community Association. Because we do have courts available. They just got to be repaired. They got to get fixed up and be enticing for kids to want to come to. So we manage that, and my boys in one of the other interviews had said it's been a long summer because Coach opens the gym at 6 o'clock in the morning, and we can come if we want. And they kind of raise an eye like, we can come if we want. And the parents are so supportive that they're like, Coach, if you open it at 6, we'll drop them off.
Nice.
So we carve in time where we can get it.
The other thing I wanted to touch on, and I think one of your culture shift type things, is you were up at Nook.
Yep.
Didn't have a huge package in the summer, but you still went up to Nook. I think that's very important for any team, but especially for you guys, where you're kind of just starting up to get exposure. And we talked after that Dover game. I don't know if I forget if you won or lost, but I loved what I saw absent of the scoreboard, where you guys want to get gritty, you want to get nasty. Like you're not going to take nothing from nobody. Like we're Solanco, we're not backing down. And I know that's a very elementary and a very early example of that, but is that proof to you that what I'm saying is working, as with me being the head coach now?
It's proof to me because that was the second time this summer we had played Dover.
Okay.
We went to York College tournament, and we played 3 games there, and we had a tough nail game against Dover, and we beat them. And then at the Nook, they beat us. But for me, first and foremost, and if you have seen any of my programs in the past, I've always had undersized, under-talented guys. And the only way, and especially in our section, the only way we're going to compete is to defend. I mean, if you look at some of the head coaches in our section, I have a challenge right there because I know they're always going to have their kids prepared. Right. They're always going to run their system. So for us, it's going to be, we've got to learn our system, but we've also got to defend. And if we're not going to defend, and I'm glad you brought it up because, yes, all summer long, I kept telling them, you're going to learn the offense, but here's what I need you to do defensively, and if you're not going to do it, then you're just not going to play. And they picked it up real quick. We brought it to Albright with us when we went there to the team camp. The boys are focused on right now what the schedule looks like, and I keep telling them, stop it. You just got to look in the mirror. Our logo, our slogan right now for the program is, are you looking in a mirror or are you looking through a window? And I gave them all T-shirts with Solanco basketball and then the word accountability spelled backwards. So when they look in a mirror, you can read it. But if you're looking through a window, it's still spelled backwards, because if you're looking through a window, you're pointing the finger at somebody else rather than yourself. So I've told them defensively we need to take accountability and get ready. And they took that the entire summer, bought into it, and we put the offense in bits and pieces. But that Dover game was one that I was like, it's working. Right. It's coming. They're buying in, they're believing it, and they're showing up, and they have not backed off since. So, and that's what's made me the happiest.
If you're going to mention T-shirts, I mean, I think there's somebody that might want one. So,
yeah.
So
I got you. As long as you make the trip to the Southern End like you always do. I don't see many other media heads besides you and another gentleman who's walking around here somewhere. I won't mention him on your broadcast. But, yeah, if there's gear laying around, by all means, we'll make sure you get it.
Last thing I want to get you out on this. If I were to ask you around like Valentine's Day or later this year, did Solanco have a successful season? You'll be able to tell me, yes, we did, if what happens.
Our games are more competitive.
Okay.
I'm telling the boys that I don't want you looking at the scoreboard, because if you're looking at the scoreboard, that means we're losing, and the opponent's going to start ticking up. My goal right now for them is to start laying the foundation for our 4th and 5th grade travel team, because we got to get back to the ways that we do things: defend, gritty, run, play and score. So if we are more competitive, don't lose by 40, to LS. Don't lose by 30 to Manheim Central. Don't lose to 30 to Warwick. We had a more year. No matter what the wins and losses look like,
Right.
if there are games that we are in it and we just didn't pull through, it was a very successful year because those kids are watching.
Yeah.
We just throw a little happy dad. We turn around and play in the Nook a couple of games with our 5th and 6th grade travel team, and my son's a 4th grader on that team. And we play Warwick in the first game, and we play Manheim Township in the second game. They won both games.
Nice.
Those kids are watching.
Yeah.
Those kids are watching. So I want our 4th and 5th graders believing in what the seniors are doing right now, and it's got to be one whole program. So if we're not getting blown out, it's a success.
Good deal. Thank you, brother.
Yeah, I appreciate you.
I'll catch you down the road.